So Ben Chesser, founder of Coniq. Coniq offers a SaaS platform for running loyalty and engagement in shopping malls. So our clients include Value Retail, Apsis, MacArthur Glen, lots of the outlet players really. And we help them understand who's shopping, what they're buying, and use that data, a lot of data, to improve their proposition. Coming from what I've heard, the journey we're going on is really quite clear. It's a journey from using data to look back and measure stuff and then say, how well did we do? Could we do anything better in the future? To very quickly, following what Anthony was saying, use the data in real time to predict stuff. So to say, if we put this brand into this mall, what will happen? And there's plenty of data and technology to do it, but the companies are just beginning on that journey.
Great, thank you. Hi guys, my name is Hamish Dupree. I'm the head of London Markets at WiredScore. WiredScore is a digital connectivity rating scheme for commercial real estate. It's not the easiest tagline. Essentially what we do is we work with landlords and developers to help them understand how well connected their buildings are, then help them improve them, and at the end of that provide a certification which allows them to actually promote that independently in the market. So really providing transparency to tenants and to owners around digital connectivity, and then also some objectivity as well. Reflecting on what Anthony was talking about, my favourite sentence that he said was, a building with poor digital connectivity is worthless. So what we're really doing here is working with landlords to help them understand that across their entire portfolios so they can put in place coherent business plans and strategies to ensure that they mitigate building obsolescence in the long term.
Hi, I'm Michelle Buxton. I'm the CEO and founder of Mallcom. We're a strategic integrator platform that works across all real estate assets, bringing into and delivering customer data, operational efficiencies, and everything like that across the real estate sector. I think the most important thing that Anthony said today was about property managers becoming service providers. And I must say that on a daily basis, when I'm trying to sell my product to property managers, they just don't see the value of it. And I think that is a huge change that needs to take place in terms of understanding why they need a product like ours and what the platform is going to be going forward in terms of making sure that these type of engagement platforms are standard to the industry and are delivering services as space, no matter whether it's retail, offices or industrial.
Hello everyone, I'm Lisa Cations, Head of Enterprise Sales for Hana. Hana is a fully owned subsidiary of CBRE, and we are building a space as a service business. It's a hospitality play where we operate the office space in a flexible manner, and we're partnering with the landlords and the enterprise clients to provide this amenitized asset where the customers can have a great experience, and our mission is to create great places where people with purpose can achieve great things. And this is what Anthony was talking about. It's all about the productivity and about the accomplishments and variety, as opposed to office as a spreadsheet.
Hi everyone, I'm Yasmina Darveniza, that's how you pronounce it. I'm an investor at Roundhill Ventures, a Proptech venture capital firm incubated by real estate private equity firm Roundhill Capital. Hopefully some of you have heard of that. So we have made 15 direct Proptech investments so far, late seed to Series B. And just relating this back to Anthony's presentation, we strongly believe in the rise of technology used in the real estate industry. And we're so committed to that we're currently raising what looks like will be a €200 million Proptech fund specifically to back up these founders and these technologies.
Hi, I'm Daniel Sprünker from realxdata. We are actually in the business of standardizing data, as we discussed before. We do so for asset managers and investment managers in terms of you can drop us any tenancy schedule or rent roll, we extract the data, we get the data on our platform, we enrich the data with benchmarks, legal data and so on. So as Anthony said, we are replacing some white collar work here in terms of analysts and research, but we still leave the judgment to you. So we cannot judge, we cannot decide, but we help you to drive better and faster investment decisions.
Okay. Name's Matthew Partridge. My day job is CEO of a company called Infabode. We partner with over 800 companies in the real estate market to collect their market research, their market news, and their opinion on what's happening in the industry. We bring that all into one place. Users sign up, subscribe to the sectors and locations they operate in, and can see everything happening in the market. It's free, no excuse not to be on there. Not going to single out anything from Anthony's presentation because I thought all of it was fantastic. Technology is undoubtedly changing the way we live and has been for a long time. I saw a fantastic quote yesterday that said if trees gave out Wi-Fi, we'd plant them everywhere. Unfortunately, they just give out oxygen.
My name is Michael Molloy. I'm co-founder, not founder. I have a team. I am co-founder of Dashflow, the CTO. I used to be on the private equity side. I worked for according to CBRE, two of the grandfathers of the private equity real estate industry in the United States. And after seeing the pain points, created Dashflow, because the most important investment decision making that any institutional fund can do is at what price does the fund buy the asset at day one. You can do it as much as you like. The fund managers will know on the asset management side, do marginal savings, but that day one pricing is absolutely key. And as technology gets easier, that's where we believe technology can help people to assess price immediately.
And so let's just pick up that point, Michael. I mean, we're trying to look here at how can you future-proof your investments. So what role do you see technology innovation taking in that?
Absolutely huge role that is just beginning over the last few years. Hardware, software, and the mindset, more importantly, that the other panel mentioned, is coming together to allow people to apply some real tangible risk management processes. So for example, anybody who's listening to the previous panel, and there was a huge dilemma, you may recall, from the very old, I'd say 1990s software company sitting over here, talking about the barrier that there is to Excel versus the more modern, I would say, women in Proptech opinion that was on the other side of the panel, having a different view. We find that dilemma about spreadsheets that over 1 billion people use around the world. We encounter that dilemma in every institution that we go into. And Dashflow is the only solution that provides a response to that dilemma. It's absolutely critical. Some people love the transparency, knowing where their numbers come from, and others prefer a black box quick answer. But when it comes to auditing and future-proofing and getting rid of the 80% chance of error in your numbers, you've got to find a solution for it. And that's what technology is bringing to the table.
Okay, good. There's a couple of questions that we had in the earlier session that I'd just like to bring into this one, which is, do you expect to see a shift towards more sourcing of and investing in property directly through online platforms? I don't know if anybody wants to pick that side up. If not, we'll draw a veil over that, and I wish I'd asked it in the previous one. So if anybody wants to pick that up. Also, it looks as though we're going beyond consumption. Will we want to consume the building in the future? How important is that part of it? And I suppose that element of community, and also how we're picking up on that data, and also, if commercial real estate is moving towards prosperity instead of growth, value instead of profit, and becoming human-centric, which picks up a lot of the things that Anthony was talking about there, how will a commercial real estate be valued going forward? So there's a few things there that I wanted to pick up and just pick up your opinion. So that's for anybody. Do feel free to dive in on any of those topics where you see fit.
Talking about valuations is something that at Wired School we're talking to a lot of the big consultancies about. How do you build technology into valuations? We all realise that valuers have to lag the investment market. That's the way it works. So there's a challenge there. The investment market at the moment doesn't really look at technology as much as it should do when they are underwriting office buildings in terms of due diligence. We look at location, we look at comparables, but actually looking at how well connected a building is or how ready for smart a building is has not yet really come into it. I used to be on the investor side, so before I joined Wired School, I worked at two major pan-European fund managers, and actually I never saw a section for technology on an IC paper. So I think that's got to change first, and we're working closely with many of our clients to really drive that change, to bring that analysis of technology up front, so before you buy a building, understanding how well it can adapt to future. So investment market first, then it happen in valuation.
I want to pick up on the, I guess, user experience. We almost sort of overuse this word. I want to sort of give a bit of light in terms of the companies, the enterprise clients that are, what are they looking for, and the key, I guess, the structural shift that we're seeing in the market. So take Google, for example. Their business planning cycles are shortening and shortening at the tremendous pace. So the companies like Google have only 12-month planning windows. So when they take the space, they only sort of know what number of employees they would be able to house and how many new additions they would need to make in the next 12 months. Taking 10, 15-year leases is just not serving their purpose. And what we're seeing a lot is the sort of different approach to portfolio planning. So there will be traditional offices, as Anthony mentioned, where it's low risk, low income sort of, and very pricey asset for fund managers to buy, but they will have the security and liability matching. And a lot of the focus is right now on flexibility. And this flexibility is required by the enterprise clients who need this overflow space. They have project workers. We're seeing a lot of sort of data showing that there will be a lot of temporary workers and dispersed workforce that needs to be accommodated. And this temporary solutions need to be sort of matched by the flex market where we operate. And then another point is the companies, a lot of research shows that circa 50% of their portfolio, 20 to 50%, occupiers want to allocate to flexible space, the different co-working providers and the flexible offices. Whereas now the share of the market is around sort of 5%, 5 to 8%. So you see a massive gap in the market, and it really is the asset management play. It's all about sort of the fund managers and the landlords responding to that. And then I want to just quickly pick on this point around who's the winner, who will take all this benefit. And I think it's going to be a lot of shift from the landlords entering into this sort of operating space where they will partner with the operators as opposed to give away the assets to the likes of WeWork to take all this benefit and the extra margin. So we're seeing, again, quite a few landlords who are setting up their own businesses, but it's really the scale and the international outreach and equally the amenities and the experience that the operators will need to provide. So Hana, for example, we're partnering with the landlords and we're providing this flex solution. And most importantly, we share the data with the landlords. And this is where they see the value because they are not just sort of giving away the space to the flex operator on the long-term lease and not have any visibility what's going on in the space. They actually have full sort of knowledge about the finances, who is coming through the door, and they're able to actually retain the customers within flex space and then move across the whole stack.
Okay, good. And Yasmina, just maybe from your point of view, there's a lot there, and we'll talk about it, data. How are you using, I suppose, and how's Roundhill more generally, I guess, using that sort of sophisticated data, information, innovation in order to outperform? I mean, in terms of being able to create more sustainable, better investments.
Mm-hmm. So at least from what I've seen in the wider real estate industry, there's a huge difference between collecting data. Sorry, I'm Australian, so I say data. Collecting data, accessing the data, and actually using it in its most efficient way. So I know a lot of real estate companies are collecting big data and they don't actually really know what to do with it. Whilst if you look at some really exciting kind of Proptech solutions that are popping up, there are software solutions that have artificial intelligence capabilities where they can bring together thousands, tens of thousands of different data points so that they can predict future values of real estate assets, which realistically you can't really do as a human being. You don't have that computational capability. So the best way of going about this, of using the big data that you may have access to or want to have access to, would really be to integrate these solutions into your everyday work. However, very, very few people do this. Is that the angle you were going with?
Yeah, no, I think that's interesting.
Yeah,
and
sure.
It'd be interesting to get from others here just how they see that. How are people using the data? And is it partly about asking the right question in a way? I mean, before you had to remember masses of information, and then suddenly it was all available on Google or other services. But you had to then learn to ask the right question, I suppose. How important is that?
Oh,
Sorry. No, you can take it.
Okay, yeah, sure. It's definitely the case of asking the right question, but as mentioned before, how it's historically done is really just based on past performance. Where do we think this is going? There's a lot of kind of finger up in the air kind of situation. When you can actually rely on the data of what's going on, not currently, not just in your area, but also being able to analyze the real estate asset price movements all over the world. That's where that can really be used to give you information that no one else really has. So you can make the investment now and then see it rise up to a certain price in, let's say, 10 years' time, based on things like population growth, or even crazy things like police records of what people are calling up about. This one particular technology that I'm looking into, it's quite fascinating. They've actually applied natural language processing to all of the police, calls that you get in the US, and they've found the exact point where people stop calling up about, crimes or safety concerns and start calling up about cosmetic issues like cracks in the road or their garbage not being collected on time. And that plugs into the algorithm to then be able to tell exactly when a property's price will skyrocket up. It's amazing.
Okay, good. Daniel, you wanted to pick something up as well there.
Thanks. So we strongly believe in that. For sure, it's also about the external data, but you have so much data within your companies, right? So we've learned that the amount of data has increased dramatically recently, but the tools we're using or we're applying to the data haven't changed. So we're still using Excel, but Excel is on your local drive. It's being shared in emails, so it sticks or stays in these folders, but you cannot really leverage it across the company. So it's about finding solutions which make your own data accessible, and then exactly match it to external data and tailor it to your assets, right? Because you need to get insights from this data. Someone was saying before, it's not about managing data lakes, but about getting this information from there. So you need to connect your own assets, your own data to market data. I think this is important key here.
Just to add to that point, I think we're right at the beginning of that journey. So in terms of internally, within fund managers, using the data in a more effective way. Every quarter when we used to do valuations and present to investors, the analysts would have to go through individual Excel sheets and ensure that everything matched up. That's mad. Like, we don't need to do that anymore. There's companies, there's products out there that can really make that process more efficient. They're just not, they don't have the widespread adoption as much as they should have. So that's internal. Also, we're not collecting enough data from our buildings themselves, actually understanding how tenants are using the buildings through sensors. The technologies are there. We need to be doing that more, then actually using that to develop better buildings that are more sustainable and more user-centric. So we're right at the beginning of that journey that is collecting more data.
Can I just make a comment on retail real estate, which obviously everyone knows is really struggling at the moment. But I think one of the biggest problems is that landlords and maybe property managers as well have never had enough data on their properties in order to manage them effectively and efficiently. And that's something that Morecambe does quite well. At the moment, we're probably collecting 5,000 or 6,000 bits of turnover data every week from tenants across 20-odd countries. And that just, those are bits of data that no one ever had before. And in some ways, they're still struggling to understand what to do with that data and how to use that data in order to manage those properties more effectively and efficiently. So that's sort of one element. The other side is, I think you mentioned, Richard, the community side. And in retail, it's all about the communities, be those and all the customers. So the landlords are suddenly seeing their tenants as customers, which is they'd never seen them as customers before. They'd always focused on the end consumer, the person walking through the door. And obviously their ability to affect the last sale is really difficult. So I think now they're coming to terms with the fact that actually they need to give their tenants or their customers a service. And that's really changed drastically and is still continuing to change. I would have thought it would be further ahead based on the retail challenges that we're having, but it's still not there yet. And I think Anthony mentioned the word retail is detail, and that's absolutely true. And the property owners and the property managers that are managing these retail destinations still need all that information in order to manage them in the new world.
Yeah, Ben, pick up on that. Yeah.
As we're talking about retail, so we focus on consumer data, who's spending money where and when. I think there's two things we've seen. One is the company has to really want to understand the data. So when the data I've seen gets adopted, it's when you're directly making someone's job easier or making it easier for them to hit their targets. So what we've seen is we're pumping out data about how brands perform. As soon as the leasing team can get hold of that and they can sign leasing contracts quicker because they know exactly how Hugo Boss will perform in this environment, then they engage with it. Up to that point, it's something interesting, but they're not going to really engage. So they engage when they see value in it for themselves. And secondly, I think, like I said before, there's a big jump forward now in predictive data. So when businesses, like we talked earlier about twins, digital twins of a building, for one purpose, if you had a marketing twin and you can say, if I change my shopping centre in this way, or I bring in this brand, or I get rid of that brand, I can predict the future, they get really excited. The ability to predict a change in their business based on changing something without having to actually change it.
Okay, good. And Matt, in terms of your side, you're obviously collating data with a number of collaborators from across the industry. How important is it, I suppose, for people that you're giving them information rather than there's just a whole mass of things that actually, I mean, how do you work that, and is that something that is necessary from I suppose an end user point of view, that they need to know that there's relevant information there and they can find it easily?
Yeah, so I think where Infabode come from is we contextualise the data. So we say in terms of what's happening, what the market are actually doing with the data, with their investment decisions and things like that. I think, you know, obviously more and more decisions have been made based on data, based on information, especially as more and more becomes accessible. But there's certainly a question mark around how much can you trust the data, and how much, you know, where's that data come from, where's that information come from. There's a massive company in America, and, you know, those agents feed the data that company then sell on, but you're massively incentivized to fill in data that you perhaps don't know. So I think we've got to be really, really careful. Data's going to play a much bigger part moving forward, but the trust of that data. I mean, another great example is my father works in real estate, and they were looking at buying, I think it was in Mumbai, a shopping centre in Mumbai, and the foot flow of this shopping centre was incredible. You know, the numbers that were coming through in terms of the amount of people going into this shopping centre. So they actually said, well, let's go over and have a look at this, because these numbers just seem unrealistic. And what was happening was people were just using the shopping centre to get out of the sun because they were too hot. You know, and this shopping centre is using these numbers to try and sell it. So I think more and more decisions will be made from data and information, and hopefully Infabode's playing a part in that. But I'd certainly always question the data that you're making those decisions on.
Can I pick on this, actually?
Yeah.
It's a really important point, because Hana is expanding globally right now, and there's a lot of data that we're analyzing, sort of what markets to go into, and it's actually sometimes very misleading in terms of sort of, is it a vibrant market and you go there because, you know, you think that the short sort of leases will work there, or there is a kind of publicly available data that supports the case. So what we've started to do is actually validate the data with the enterprise clients, and almost sort of create our primary research engine where we engage with the big occupiers and actually ask them, here are the locations we're planning to go to, would you be able to take the space there, rather than kind of going there speculatively and assume that there is a market. We are trying to validate the data and make sustainable sort of decisions in terms of our growth, and that we see as a sort of big advantage for us, having access to all those enterprise clients through CBRE platform, as opposed to just growing at scale, going into different markets, and then trying to take risk and push the product through massively because we already invested in that.
Let's start with this end first of all, Michael. So just give a quick kind of what value do you think? What do you think the key value is that you can see that innovation tech data is going to bring for the future of real estate?
Well, a lot has been discussed here. I'll talk to the panel topic, which is boosting investment performance. And I think a number of panels this morning, and this one included, has mentioned the word IC, the investment committee. So it's all well and good as platforms mature across the pond over here in Europe and in Asia to garner more data and get a better picture of the data, the big data pool that is in real estate. Once you get into that room and you're in front of the investment committee and they say, right, are we allocating Nuveen's funds to 1 trillion of assets? The investment committee will have one question: at what price do we buy? So the technology that's coming around today is going to help us do one thing amazingly quickly, which is assimilate all of this data, regardless of which sources you use as the years go by, as the data improves, and help you blend your creativity, your imagination, your drive, your ambition for bidding, and for allocating the capital that you've raised for investors into those assets that you've decided with human decision-making that will override potentially 90% of your data. It's a human decision at the end of the day, and it has to be calibrated. So the technology that can overlay human decision on whatever data source you use is going to speed up the weeks spent during each year on trying to come to a decision on price.
Great, Matt.
I think that more and more decisions will be made off data, and I think those companies that are successful will be those ones that can interpret that data and provide services off the back of it. It won't be those that are collecting or sitting on the biggest data sets.
Daniel.
Totally agree with Michael. I think the decision-making processes and investment-making processes will change a lot compared to any other asset class. Real estate is by far the most inefficient asset class in terms of cost per transaction. So this has to change a lot. It didn't really matter in the last 10 years because everybody was still making money. It will probably change in the future. So decisions have to be made more precisely. And as you said, it's not about who has the most data, but who can derive the best decision from the data itself, because data itself gets more and more commodities, so you need solutions to derive decisions for yourself.
Great.
Overall, I think the benefits are obvious. I probably don't need to repeat what everyone else is saying here. But I think the real key is, how are you going to use this? How are you going to integrate this into your everyday processes? And personally, from what I've seen, unless you have the resources and the time to analyze the market, find the absolute best solution, and integrate it into your company in an efficient way, you need to find someone else that can. If you don't have that, I'm going to be a little bit cheeky and say, find me afterwards.
Great.
So I think that the most important for us is really the asset management, and the investors who are sitting in this audience should just really kind of make a decision. Are they in the income play, in the bond sort of market still, or are they actually in the hugely and heavily operating business? And if you are in the heavily operating business, then it's really important to analyze the performance, to understand how your building is performing on the sort of operational side, but also what the users are thinking about your building and how you're able to retain their customers. So it's really the front end and the back end and the integration of all this data that will set you apart from the competition.
Great, Michelle.
For me, it's slightly different. If I don't just talk about data, because everyone has basically said what I was going to say. But I think in terms of Proptech, I think it's the integrating of platforms and bringing the old and the new together to deliver productivity, to deliver value, and to deliver data.
Ultimately, I think the aim of all the technology we've been discussing is to hopefully improve people's quality of life. Real estate as an asset class has a real impact upon all of our lives, that we work and live within real estate. So I'm hopeful that the technology we discussed will help to reduce friction in different areas of our life and really go to improve our quality of life.
Okay, last but not least, I think what we should see is the businesses can consume the data, they can get insight from it and predict changes. They then need to be able to actually make the changes. So one thing is to look at the data and say we should do X, Y, Z, but if you're stuck in a 15-year lease or you can't move your walls, then you can't actually react. So they need to be able to react much, much quicker.